Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No, we are listening anymore. Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No, we are live in a constant state of fear and misery. No, we are listening anymore.
Hello, everybody. So today is Sunday, March 10th, and we are bringing you Block Digest number 163 at block height 566,501. So what is crack-a-lackin', you oversleeping degenerates of the world?
Oh, man. I don't know. Yeah, it's just daylight savings. I don't know what it is, but it always screws you up. I mean, I even set all the clocks forward on the oven and the microwave, got up early. I still kind of feel out of it. How you doing today, Janine?
It's a really stupid concept, but thankfully I'm not in a place that still adheres to that as far as I know, or I have to check. I don't think it adheres to it, but yeah, daylight savings sucks.
Yeah, it seems like every time it comes around now, everybody talks about how we need to get rid of this thing because it just causes a bunch of trouble. So, yeah, that would be nice. Let's just stick to a time and work with it.
Yeah, you guys should get your shit together. I can't believe you cannot figure out, cannot organize your things because of the daylight savings. It's a shame.
Okay.
Blame the farmers.
Time is an illusion. Time doubly so.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, time isn't an illusion on this. We got a lot to get through in a short amount of time here, so let's jump right into it, man. What's the first story here?
Nope, that's it. I'm drunk. I'm just gonna bullshit. Fuck the news.
Yeah, this daylight savings caused enough of a hubbub to where gotta crack a beer, I guess. That's all right. It's afternoon, thanks to daylight savings.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, though. So, first up, I guess, is a few new updates regarding the QuadrigaCX situation. So, first of all, Business Insider on the 6th published an article initially claiming that the laptop of the QuadrigaCX CEO had been cracked. And this was a completely false story. It's just somebody somewhere fucked up very bad fact-checking and pretty much conflated Ernst & Young finding, air quote, cold storage addresses on the chain that were empty with them cracking the laptop. But in reality, all they did was take possession of it, and absolutely no progress as of right now has been made as far as actually decrypting it. And like we went over last time, the air quote cold storage addresses that Ernst & Young found are in no way possibly the supposed funds that Quadriga claimed they actually had custody of, because it was literally only a 10th of the 20-something thousand coins they should have at the fullest that those addresses had ever been in their history on the chain. But there's also been an interview with Jesse Powell from Kraken by Decrypt Media that has actually, at least from what I've seen following this since it started, a number of new facts regarding Quadriga and their operations, as well as just some of Jesse's opinions on previous facts that have been revealed. And so, first of all, what I think is a giant, like, red alarm is apparently the entire platform was being maintained by a single developer, Alex Hannon. And the co-founder of Quadriga, Michael Patron, literally left a review on Hannon's LinkedIn page saying, our competitors required teams in order to replicate the work of this one man. So he was literally bragging that their entire exchange had a single developer who designed and maintained the platform. And that is just absolute craziness. Like, for an example to compare to Kraken, which Jesse goes into in this interview, Kraken has more than 100 developers working on their exchange. Like, the notion that you can maintain a system that is going to involve securely managing your cryptocurrency, reconciling that with internal balance databases for your customers, tying all of this into an order matching engine that needs to maintain backups of all of its state at all times, or you pretty much risk just completely losing track of who has what funds on your platform, which is an unbelievable clusterfuck on a platform like this. Like, if you lose track of your users' balances, then you effectively have zero basis on, or as far as like deciding who is entitled to what funds during withdrawal process and crediting processes. Like, that is absolute insanity. And to go one step further, as far as backing up the state of exchange records, it was only done once an hour. So literally all it takes is one fuck up, one crash, and if it doesn't happen exactly after the hourly backup is made, they have just lost track of their customers' balances. Like, pretty much every other exchange in this space is doing real-time backups. An order is placed, that's immediately tossed in a backup. A user's balance is changed, that is instantly tossed into a backup as the primary database is updated in real time. Because if you lose track of that information, you have just lost the ability to function as a custodial business. Like, tracking your users' balances and what is going on your platform and your order book is just as, if not, no, not more so, but it is absolutely just as important as actually properly securing your cryptocurrency. Because it doesn't matter if you have that money, you're fucked if you don't know whose money is what. Like, that is absolutely core requirement for running a business like this. So just the way that this exchange was operated was a complete incompetent shit show. Now, as well, this next one is a previous known fact, but there's an aspect, at least I was not aware of until this interview. QuadrigaCX lost $14 million in the parity multisig bug, the oops, I killed it incident that locked up a gigantic amount of Ethereum in now broken multisig wallets. And apparently, this developer, Hannon, was one of the people in the GitHub issue threads trying to push support for actually forking to redeem and free up funds in these broken smart contracts. And so, like, this right here is showing that despite losing this money, they did not attempt to take any kind of financially oriented solution to the situation. They did not attempt to stack up their own profits to pay people back. They did not eat the loss and then try to make users whole. They were very likely simply just praying that Ethereum would fork to recover these funds, and very likely took no other action in order to address the issue of $14 million of user funds disappearing. And given the fact that we have seen evidence suggesting that funds were moving in very large amounts back and forth between Quadriga and other exchanges, it's not unlikely that they attempted to actually trade themselves out of that hole, instead of simply taking that loss themselves to make users whole over time. So not only was the exchange on a technical level just ran by a complete incompetent, group of people and attitude, but on a business side as well, if what this information indicates is what actually happened, just their business management side of handling this business was just completely and utterly absurd. And really, the next thing that Jesse goes on to talk about, obviously, is the kind of suspicious nature of Cotton's death in India, as well as the timing of leaving all of his assets to his wife, Jennifer Robertson. And really, honestly, there's nothing new here except that no autopsy was performed on the body. But, given that it's definitely possible that something could have been faked here, but it's still, I think, somewhat unlikely that multiple governmental authorities could be completely defrauded in a situation like this. Now, the next aspect is something I have been waiting a little bit to cover, just because of what I think is some ambiguity as far as the accuracy of these assertions. But a number of people have been speculating lately that the co-founder of QuadrigaCX, Michael Patron, is actually Omar Dhanani, somebody who was actually convicted in the United States and served time in a federal prison for being part of an identity theft ring. And looking at these two pictures of these individuals side by side, I mean, it is very unlikely they are not the same person. Like, they would literally need to just be completely unrelated doppelgangers. Like, they have the same facial structure, the same ears. There are even identifiable dimples on the forehead in both of these individual pictures. And really, the thing that kind of drives it home for me is that this person, Omar Dhanani, has operated under multiple pseudonyms in the past, one of which was Omar Patron, the last name of the QuadrigaCX CEO. And so really, the only response this person has made to these allegations is to say he is not this person and that he had not been working at QuadrigaCX for 3 years now. Although I have seen no corroborating evidence at all to back up the fact that he has not been involved in this company for 3 years. And this is just in combination with the lack of funds being available, the way that this business was operated by a single individual, the poor business practices, the fact that if Michael Patron is actually Omar Dhanani, which I think personally is very likely, that this exchange was co-founded by somebody guilty of committing identity fraud in the past. Jesse goes on to speculate in his last comment that it's potential that this entire exchange was effectively set up as a front for money laundering, which is also another thing that Omar Dhanani has made. He has pretty much stated that he is very good at doing so in the past in relation to his identity theft charges. And so, like, I'm still at the point here where the whole theory of Cotton faking his death and running off with money, I mean, there's nothing changed in terms of information to prove or disprove that. I'm not going to completely discount it out of hand, but looking at all of the information that is available now versus when that theory was originally formed, I am thinking it is much more likely that Cotton actually did die. Like, stress is something that can very much exacerbate things like Crohn's disease. And there is a slew of circumstantial information to suggest that other people were involved in the removal or just the non-existence of those funds in the first place. And the last thing is there's actually indications of accounts set up on the exchange under different pseudonyms that were used to withdraw money from Quadriga to other exchanges. And so this, to me right now, is looking more and more like people in the company other than the CEO, Mr. Cotton, were actually involved in whatever fraudulent or illegal activity led to this exchange pretty much being insolvent.
Wow, man, it just keeps developing, doesn't it? I mean, like you're saying, I mean, yeah, the stress could have certainly, gotten that guy in a bad place to where he actually did pass away. But I mean, yeah, kind of like this co-founder being like a part of an identity theft ring. I mean, kind of makes me wonder, speculate, like maybe this guy got in with this, agenda of like, hey, we're gonna, pay off the right, maybe this one single developer, and we're gonna get this founder over someplace, and he's gonna disappear, and I mean, I'm gonna change my identity. I mean, I don't know. The whole situation stinks. I mean, going like you're saying, one developer to run the exchange, hourly backups instead of real time, and doing some possible buybacks to try and earn back customer funds, like we saw with Mt. Gox and the way that played out. I mean, it's terrible practices like this that are leading to some of these heavy-handed regulations, I think, coming down. I mean, we didn't see some of the news, about some of this stuff going on in Canada till recently. And, it might have a lot to do with this exchange. And, this is the way of the past. Like, things got to evolve to a way where people can, if they are working on a third-party platform, at least that platform kind of be held to some best practices to make sure those customer funds are safe and protected. Because, yeah, we've had too many instances like this, or too many exit scams. It's just we need to get past this first generation of exchanges that are just, there's no rules set in place to where people just create it and go, and whatever works, works. So yeah, it's a mess there though.
I mean, like, no part, like you've had to bring in other people just to help in the maintenance and development of a wallet. Like, could you even imagine trying to operate and build out infrastructure for an exchange all by yourself?
Yeah, I think it should be easier actually, because
Plug and play.
I mean, come on, it's just a web server that also has a very an a low Bitcoin level wallet functionality, plus a lot of things those people can interact with. It's just web development. But
no. The order matching engine, dude. Like that, you need to have a completely atomic matching engine interacting with your database of user balances with zero margin for error of something on the matching engine not being atomic with a database update operating at extremely low latency.
Yeah, that seems easy, but I'm not sure what's the difficulty with that. Atomic operations are quite well done in many different programming languages, many different concepts. I don't understand what's the difficulty, seriously.
Because you have to optimize for extremely low latency, and like just a single fuck up that loses track of people's balances, and now you don't know who has what money. Your business cannot continue to operate them.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's hard to fuck up like that. I really don't I really don't know. I mean, come on, it's just an exchange, it's just a web page. It's nothing special. We are doing this since the early 2000s.
All right, no part. I'm going to challenge you to create your own exchange engine.
And then plug that into the Wasabi hardware wallet, and then boom, yeah, exchange coin joins on a hardware. Like, we're gonna just run the market.
Yeah, we cannot. They say that's risky from a regulatory point of view.
Yeah.
All right. Any more comments on this before we move on, though?
I mean, just that this is like the Coinbase thing. It's another example of the hazards of giving your personally identifiable information to these exchanges. Even one, like, I mean, as far as I could tell, Quadriga was, I mean, Canada has regulations around banks, even crypto banks. Maybe it's not as strict as other places or something, but they were a regulated exchange as far as I'm aware, and this completely, they completely missed this. So the idea that being a regulated exchange protects you against people like this, especially people who are skilled at, moving countries, trying to erase the trail of their history, like this stuff is going to happen at this thing could happen at any exchange that is collecting thousands of people's identity documents, which is why, like, people like to say, oh, KYC is about preventing risk, and it's like, well, KYC in itself is also a risk. The risk is just shifted to the customer instead. So that's why I don't like participating in services like that, because every single service that I use with those conditions requires me to put myself at risk to people that I don't know, who may pass that information on to who, God knows who, including someone who apparently, could be involved in an identity theft ring. I'm surprised. I would be surprised if more exchanges don't have this issue and that they're not giant honeypots for these people. So yeah, this should scare people. I hope it scares people, and people should change what businesses they're deciding to work with.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so no para. What does Chainalysis have to say about whales?
Yes, it really seems like I'm going to Chainalysis seminar every time when they do one. So you might even can call me a Chainalysis guy. So this one was about not really the traditional Chainalysis things, or maybe this is the traditional Chainalysis things. They were examining the Bitcoin ecosystem, who has a lot of money and what he's doing with that. So it's really nice to have this because, well, yeah, I have to say that there was no methodology discussed, but I mean, Chainalysis is a trustworthy company, right? So we can, if anyone can figure these things out, then it might be them, let's say. The other thing I want to mention, what's missing from it, is that they just didn't drop names, they didn't drop company names, they didn't drop individual names. Well, of course, 100% they know exactly who are the most. I mean, yeah, that's quite interesting information, but they just didn't drop names, so they were just talking in statistics. So how I wanted to talk about this was in a more interactive way, because it's something that we can all guess on. So I ask a question, you guys answer, and I tell you that none of you figured it out because you're all wrong and this is the right answer. All right.
All right.
Okay. So a couple of definitions. Whale, they defined whale as 15,000 or more Bitcoin. So they were looking at all the whales they could find who has 15,000 or more Bitcoin. And this was entities and individuals. So, right, entities are companies and individuals. So an exchange would be a whale. They don't count the users of an exchange. The exchange is an entity. Anyway, they were looking at Bcash too, and they said 30,000 or more Bcash. So I'm not sure why they doubled the number for a whale definition, but
Because it's worth dog shit.
okay, whatever.
Can I just point something out? Like, let's say the Bitcoin price is or was about $3,000 per Bitcoin at the time they did the survey. Did you say that they classify a whale as having 15,000 Bitcoin? Because that's like
Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's like tens of millions of dollars. They consider someone a whale only if they have tens of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, I would put it lower than that, but
well, yes, that's pretty much what they did. I remember in 2013 there were some data on Roger having 40,000 Bitcoin or something like that. Anyway, that was self-reported, so I think that should be a fine number. Anyway, I go further, and one more thing about the definitions is that Satoshi is not included because they couldn't figure out which coins he owns. Because he didn't move. He mined and then he didn't move them, so it just they just cannot be shared. Yeah. So first question: how many entities hold Bitcoin? Like, how many humans and companies hold Bitcoin? What would you say?
ones that are whales, or in general, how many total hold Bitcoin?
In general, how many? Yeah, in general.
Oh God. I mean, it must be at least tens of millions of people.
I was going to say between around 150 million.
All depending on whether or not they're counting people just using custodial things. I mean, tens of millions or hundreds. Well, then tens of millions.
All right, 22 million.
Oh, I was way off.
Yeah, but you guys were actually guessing quite right. All right, that was good. So next question: how many entities control 96% of all Bitcoins?
Well,
so it's
probably shouldn't answer because I think I saw the answer to this question. So you guys guess.
Less than 1,000.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like, I think I've seen something about 4% of all users or something control 96% of the fund. So 4% of 40.
Yes, 3% actually.
Yeah, that's a small number, but yeah.
3% control 96% of all Bitcoins.
What's the raw number on that, though?
Sorry?
What's the raw number on that? I'm too lazy to do math.
Yeah, let's not go into that because that's everything else what they were talking about. So let's just go with the flow. So why this is not that bad? Because it also counts exchanges, so it's just Bitcoins being centralized in places. So that's not great, but it's not like 3% of individuals would control most of the Bitcoins. Yeah. So it's mostly exchanges, right? Darknet markets. What else was there? Yeah, some kind of services. Okay, 3 more questions left. How many entities control? How many individuals control 21% of all Bitcoins? Wait.
This is fun.
Sorry, I fucked up. Yeah, it's just how many entities control 21%. So how many of these entities exactly? What Shinobi was asking. It's 49. So they counted 49, whereas that's everything they were doing. But most of them are exchanges. All right, almost the last question. 28 largest individual, how much do they control of all Bitcoins in percentage? So 28 individuals, these are individuals. How many percentage do they control? These are the biggest ones.
At least a quarter or more.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. That sounds about right.
Janine? 28 people. How many Bitcoins do they control?
Again, I think I saw the answer to this question, so I'm not going to answer.
All right. Okay. So they control 5% of all Bitcoins.
Whoa, we're doing way better than I thought.
I could have
Sweet.
got that right, man. I just followed your quarter. I was thinking about 5-10%. I don't know.
All right. So this is down from 2017 to from 9% to 5%. 39 individuals to 28 individuals. Now, it would be really interesting to figure out who the heck they are, but of course they don't, they respect their privacy, so they don't tell data. So how
Yeah, I'm sure the reason is that they respect their privacy and not just because they couldn't figure it out.
Or they could get sued or something. I mean, like, gee, I don't know. It seems like you could bring a lawsuit if you're that kind of whale and some company tries to come up against you like that. You could cause them headaches. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I think if they would talk about, hey, these guys are the largest holders in Bitcoin, well, some people would be really pissed off, and not as a public, but as the people who were exposed to be the largest holders. And you might don't want to make them enemies, right?
No, definitely not.
Okay, so how they interpreted it is that early adopters are cashing out, but slowly, and they don't cash out all of that. So they are committed to the ecosystem. They don't seem to want to sell it. And the last question is, this is going to be a difficult one. Which coin has more wealth concentration, Bitcoin or Bcash?
Bcash.
Yeah, I was going to say the
Bcash.
same.
Wow, how did you get all the right answer? Who would have thought that?
Yeah, that was definitely the easiest one. I like that one.
Well, if here's the question though, if Bcash ownership is more concentrated, that means that Bcash is more likely a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah, that means that exactly. So 24 Bcash will control 11% of all Bcash. All right, a couple of more things. 2 criminals were identified. No, they identified 3 before, a couple of weeks ago, but then one of the criminals are not whale anymore, so they don't include it here. They hold over 100,000 Bitcoin. They are not price or liquidity risk because they cannot cash out because of Know Your Customer exchanges. One of them made their money on the Silk Road. The other one made his money, or they didn't say where he made his money, but he cashed out first from BTCA to Bitcoin. I'm not quite sure what that means anyway. BTCA was a Bitcoin exchange. They probably didn't make their money there anyway. And 407,000 Bitcoin trading whales, miners, exchanges, etc. They are also not impacting the price, but rather investing when the price goes down, which stabilizes. So they are buying buying Bitcoin when the price goes down. So we should like trading things because they pump they give floor. I don't know. Okay, 9 early adopter whale, over 200,000 Bitcoin. They have over 200,000 Bitcoin. They sell in rallies. They seem to be more committed to this ecosystem because they don't sell all the money. So since 2017, they were the ones who sold most of the coins, and that concentration is decreasing. Since 2017, trading volume is 7 times greater. Early adopters are being replaced by traders. That's it. That's all. Interesting statistics.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting in the way that it does sort of show the way that the concentration of Bitcoin is kind of sparsing out. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting also in the idea of like looking at the Bcash thing and trying to say like, yeah, this is a good way to measure that there's just like, it's a small pool of people controlling the supply or the market. And, maybe regulators can take positions based on that. I mean, I like the fact that they're not giving out any names or anything like that, but I certainly, I imagine they're probably doing something with this information. I mean, they're working at it. I mean, I don't know, all these Chainalytic and Chainalysis and companies like that. I mean, if they're going to put out a webinar or something, I imagine it's going to be something non-controversial. I mean, last one, I don't remember what it was, but I'm trying to remember. Last one, weren't they covering like mixing services and stuff like that? I remember you got suspended the last time.
They were covering the 2 or 3 criminal whale. Yeah, they were diving into that. So it's basically a zooming out of that picture.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's good to hear and good to get some information on what they're looking at, especially whenever it's some statistics that'll be good to bring to people where they're always telling me like, oh, everybody, like there's just like this small group of people that control the supply. I mean, like, yeah, there's large market makers, but it's not like that. So, I mean, what is 5% of Bitcoin is like some of these major whales like holding a large supply. It's relatively small.
What's interesting is that many of the times people come with statistics, and I cannot count the times that people have linked to Reddit the richest Bitcoin addresses with the title that these are the biggest Bitcoin wallets, right? Which is just so stupid, but this is how they do that. But if someone has a chance to get that right, that might be Chainalysis, I think.
Alrighty, though. We ready to slide along?
You're on the wrong mic there. You're getting some echo feedback on that one.
There's no such thing as a wrong mic. All right. So let's move along. I guess Janine, you are up with the Bitcointopia update. I think we've all been waiting for this one for a while.
Yes. So yeah, this is a story we've covered probably more than anyone else. Like it actually hasn't gotten that much press that I've seen, especially when we were initially covering it. So we initially reported on a guy named Morgan Raccoons, who is not exactly popular for this reason, but he's known by a number of people for, doing a lot of scams, like asking for money or loans or whatever on Twitter, or saying like, I'll take your money and I'll trade it and then I'll give you more money. And then he never, keeps those promises, and people end up losing money when they interact with him. And this has happened on a number of occasions, at least since 2015. But we covered when he was arrested for money laundering and other related charges in February 2018, last year, in episode 82. And then we then talked to Chris Rice Crypto in episode 114 because he had briefly worked on the Bitcointopia project, which was basically Morgan saying, I'm going to build a Bitcoin utopia in the middle of, where was it again? I don't even remember what the area was. Nevada. Yeah, so he basically claimed that he had bought a bunch of acres of land, and he was like tweeting pictures, and he had a website where you could like sign up to buy this land and even buy a house, a tiny house that was made. Apparently they were going to make it out of, recycled materials and all of this. And then, he started tweeting pictures of what was actually on the land and making a big deal out of it, even though it was only a tent with literally a trench he dug with a shovel around it, and it was really not impressive. But all the pictures were like utopia and all of this, but it turned out to be a scam. And
they made a bridge throwing sticks in the water.
Right, that 2x4.
Yeah.
That was some heavy lifting.
Yeah. So Chris Rice Crypto noticed a number of red flags early on when he was part of the project, and then he ended up leaving, or rather he was publicly fired, and then he decided to leave because he was getting, various allegations were being made about him by Morgan as like a defensive tactic for being called out on the scam. And then in episode number 140, I did an update on that story where he was arrested in October 2018 related to Bitcointopia as a land fraud scheme. And I provided a list of all of these prior episodes in a tweet from the Block Digest account that's in the video description. And then the recent update to this whole fiasco is that the San Diego Union Tribute, is it Tribune or Tribute? I didn't actually check. Anyway, San Diego news outlet reported 2 days ago that Morgan has pled guilty to wire fraud for selling land that he did not own, and also for conducting an unlicensed money transmitter business, which was the first thing that he was arrested for. And then obviously it was really stupid of him to then cook up a land fraud scheme while he was on parole for the first one. According to the plea agreement that was reported in the article, there were at least 10 people who sent him money for land, which, as it turns out, it was owned by the federal government. We went over the discrepancies in how much land he was claiming to own versus the land that he actually owned. I think it was less than 5 acres total that he actually had some kind of, legitimate control over. And in total, apparently, these 10 or so people sent about $45,000. And he will be facing up to 20 years in prison on the wire fraud charge and up to 5 years in prison on the money transmitting charge.
Rocky Raccoon checked into his room only to find Gideon's Bible.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like we were talking about. I don't like all the we called it or anything like that, but I mean, we certainly warned everybody about what was going on. And I remember, I'm nearly certain that Morgan actually watched some of our episodes on it, because I know that he blocked me shortly after we talked to Rice Crypto, and Rice came on to talk about it. And yeah, it's one of those things where I guess it's good to see like at least some sort of a level of justice for that level of fraud, because it was pretty gross.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he probably only watched the first episode that we did on it, which was all the way back in February of last year, because that one we were mainly just covering his arrest and kind of the nuances of what did the undercover officer actually say and all of that. So it probably didn't come across to him as being too negative. And I did see him, like, I think I remember him commenting below one of the Block Digest tweets about that episode, but definitely after that, like not only on the show, but on Twitter, we were like sharing screenshots of tweets that he had made where he was claiming that he was going to spy on people in Bitcoin and that he had done work with, you know, various government agencies in the US and taught them how to use Bitcoin or how to surveil Bitcoin, which was really creepy. Who knows whether any of that was ever true, but he was clearly a person who was disturbed. And you know, it's unfortunate that even when it was very obvious to a bunch of people that there was something wrong with this project, there were still people in Bitcoin relatively influential who were, I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for supporting him on the basis that they thought the drug related charge, the initial money laundering related charge, because it was tied in with marijuana, maybe they felt that was worth supporting because that would set a bad precedent in relation to Bitcoin. I don't know if I really agree with that, but I could see someone doing that. But for a person who is supporting him in that way to not make it absolutely clear to everyone that he had a history of soliciting donations, soliciting loans, and not repaying those, and to support a person like that and not make it absolutely clear, hey, you know, I'm doing this in my personal capacity, but do not donate to this person because they have a history of, you know, not being honest and even being aggressive when people tried to, you know, seek some kind of, you know, dispute resolution. Like, that should have been made absolutely clear from the beginning. And a number of people did not do that. And that's why I'm disappointed in how certain people handled that.
Don't forget his ASIC innovation, guys. We're just going to build all the ASICs in Minecraft, and then everybody can mine without burning electricity and save the environment because physics doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's where, if you were really like, that's where we were kind of in the craziness of 2017 when all that stuff was going down. And yeah, just obvious, like people were throwing money in all different kinds of directions. And this just cropped up because if you did a little bit of investigative work, like just go to Morgan's YouTube channel and just check out what he's doing. You know, I mean, like things were, yeah, I mean, like there was some weird tweets and definitely some weird activity to be worried about as far as what was going on in his background. So yeah, that was a crazy time, and I guess people were just happy to throw around some of those coins.
All right, so I guess what do we got next, Janine? Another your shitty deeds come home to roost story?
Yes, it seems that we're finally getting to the final stages of the whole OneCoin scam. So the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announced on the same day, actually, that Morgan Raccoon's, that article about him was published, that they had arrested and charged the leaders of the OneCoin International Pyramid Scheme, which was started in 2014 by two Bulgarian siblings who reportedly gathered more than $3 billion in sales revenue from the whole OneCoin scam between 2014 and 2016 alone. And the report from the attorney's office says that the arrest of Konstantin Ignatova took place 2 days prior to that report being published, so March 6th. And then his sister, Ruja Ignatova, who was the founder and original leader of OneCoin, has been indicted for wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, but she is, quote, at large still. So she has not been arrested. As far as I can tell, I didn't look if there was an update. Maybe they had caught her in the subsequent days, but so they say in the report, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney Geoffrey S. Berman said, as alleged, these defendants created a multi-billion-dollar cryptocurrency company based completely on lies and deceit. They promised big returns and minimal risk, but as alleged, this business was a pyramid scheme based on smoke and mirrors more than zeros and ones. Investors were victimized while the defendants got rich. Our office has a history of successfully targeting, arresting, and convicting financial fraudsters, and this case is no different. Now, of course, and that they like to highlight these type of cases is because they're probably cryptocurrency related cases, but of course there are numerous pyramid schemes worth multi-billion-dollar valuations that are still ongoing and have not been taken down. So just be aware of that. They are very selective in what they choose to focus on. Anyway, further down, the report says the investigation has revealed that Ignatova and her co-founder conceived of and built the OneCoin business, fully intending to use it to defraud investors. For example, in one email between Ignatova and her co-founder, she described her thoughts on the exit strategy for OneCoin. And the first option that Ignatova listed was take the money and run and blame someone else for this. There was also a guy from Florida named Mark Scott who was charged with one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. I think that was, I don't know how long he was been involved, but they described an incident where he was actually in Vegas last year. I think it was last year, where he was meeting with OneCoin people, like investors and such, and they were saying what's going to happen, and he was saying if you have an exit strategy, then you don't know what this project is about and all of that. And it's like, well, yes, you don't know what this project is about because the exit strategy is the strategy. So he was charged with one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. Constantine and Mark Scott, this guy, have maximum sentences of 20 years, while Ruja is obviously still at large, but she'll apparently face a maximum sentence of 25 years.
Wrecked! And I will say once again, I am not a fan of the government. I am not a fan of many of the completely insane, unethical shit that law enforcement does. But you know what? Sometimes even a fucking asshole does a good thing, and even a retard does something right. So rot in hell, you scamming piece of shit.
Yeah, it's funny to even just hear the name OneCoin and Ruja and all that again. It's like, yeah, just a throwback. But yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is like, it's getting kind of eliminated. I'm just sitting here thinking about, okay, so BitConnect got taken down, OneCoin got taken down. What's the next one of those where it's just so blatant that it's like a ridiculous, everybody is just jumping on stage and saying like, we're going to make money, invest. I'm trying to think of what's the next one. I can't.
Wayne Vaughn, he's going to get wrecked for Wayne Chain.
Ripple?
That's what I was thinking. It was either Ripple or BSV or Bcash. It's between those three, I think. It's like a trilogy. And but they're not as crazy, because those were crazy, where it was just people yelling and like, we're going to make money. These are just a little...
Wouldn't it be amazing that, someone like, I'm not going to say his name, but I think you'll all know who I'm talking about. Wouldn't it be amazing that a guy who became famous for calling out his employer for operating like an account fraud scheme would then be caught in his own scheme?
Yeah, it wouldn't be too surprising with this space.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so we got any more input on the scammers?
Nope.
Alrighty then. I guess let's slide along into the next one. Trezor back in the news to fix 2 previous vulnerabilities and a new one that had not been disclosed yet with a new firmware update. And before I go into these, I really have to say this. Like, no hardware device can be 100% airtight in terms of attacks by somebody who physically has the device. But they can be way more secure than a Trezor by actually using secure elements. So, like, it really boggles my mind at this point how this wallet is the most popular hardware wallet out there when it's literally the least secure. out of all of the hardware wallets out there. It boggles my fucking mind. And yeah, it's fine if you're not actually losing physical possession of it. But in the case you do, a Trezor is going to get cracked way quicker than the other devices out there. So let's dive into these.
Well, wait a second. So I think you should mention there is a very specific reason why Trezor doesn't use a secure element, and they've mentioned this a number of times, which is that if they were to use the secure element in a way that it would be useful, they would be part of an NDA with obviously Intel, and they would not, if there were any problems with it, be able to talk about that. And obviously it's not open source code, which means that they could not continue to make the claim that their device is they're trying to make it as the hardware and stuff as open as possible. So they're doing it for a very specific reason.
Multiple responses to that. Intel is absolutely not the only company out there that creates secure elements. You can fucking leverage your position as a producer, and it has been done in the past, to open source these things. And 3, to claim that they're not open source or accessible is completely a lie. There are multiple specs and code instances for these kinds of chips floating around illegally, and it's literally as simple as sign an NDA to get access to it yourself. Yeah, so yes, there are barriers. There are barriers to get access to it.
There are huge issues with hardwares. The secure hardware is not open source, and this seems to be the consensus in the developer community. So I'm not sure that's fair to say that.
It absolutely is, because like I said, there have been manufacturers of things that leveraged to make things open, and they absolutely are accessible. You can find all of this information floating around in a legal gray area, and you can also approach a company and sign an NDA to get direct access from them yourself. So yes, while there are barriers to getting access to that information, it is a complete lie to say it is completely inaccessible.
What information are you talking about?
The actual like deep specs of a device and the firmware running on it.
Yeah, I didn't say it was completely inaccessible, but the NDA presents a barrier because it's not like Trezor can share that source code with their users. They may have an NDA, they may be able to see the source code, but that's not something that users can self-verify. That's the point.
Just because they can find in responding to this. Yes, they can. They can go. There are steps you have to take to do so, but you absolutely can. But
I can do so many things too in programming, but developing is all about compromises. I cannot go down and do stuff in assembly. That's the compromise of Bitcoin core developers. They go down so low level. They do stuff in very low level things, but they don't go down for assembly, where your logic leads, right? It's the same for hardware. It's like, how low are you going to go? You have to set something, because otherwise it's just not, shit just doesn't get done.
Dude, the point is, this is accessible through routes, and it does offer more security against physical attacks. But to actually get into these exploits, the first one was a side channel attack on the pin to unlock the device. So all of the code was airtight in this and functioning correctly. But the problem was that you could actually try multiple selected incorrect pins and monitor the power consumption of the actual device, and going through 10 different pins monitoring the activity on the device, you would be able to compute the 6 most probable pins. And the way the device is set up is after 16 incorrect pins, it will wipe itself. So there is a very decent chance in doing this that one of those pins that you compute would be the accurate pin entered before the device actually goes and resets itself. And so this is pretty much something that is a risk with pretty much any kind of device that is going through specific computations that are unique based on the input. You can actually analyze the electrical activity and try to figure out what it's actually doing. And so the way that they actually fixed this was alter the way that the pin is used to actually access this secret information stored on the device. And instead of actually going through and trying unique pins, what they simply do now is derive a key from the pin, which is used to encrypt the secret information. And in this way, whenever you enter a pin, instead of going through a cycle of unique operations that can be differentiated, it's simply taking the pin, hashing for the key, and then just attempting to decrypt the information. And then that decryption operation either succeeds or fails. So in doing this, the operations at a low level are pretty much identical no matter what pin is entered. And so trying to enter unique pins does not give any kind of electrical indication of what's going on, because no matter what the input, it's going through the exact same series of computations every time. And so they were able to actually just completely deal with this bug with that slight architecture change. The next bug was the wallet fail implementation displayed at the 35C3 Chaos Communication Congress last year. And so this was actually a glitch attack that pretty much allowed you to interrupt a firmware upgrade process and alter the read protection status on the RAM of the device, because during a firmware upgrade, it effectively would pull things from the flash memory and dump your word seed and everything into the RAM while it went through the firmware upgrade. And then if the firmware upgrade failed, the idea was it would wipe the RAM and all of the key secrets and preserve them. But this glitch attack allowed you to effectively glitch the device in the middle of this firmware upgrade and dump all of your key information directly out of the RAM. Although this did require cracking open the enclosure and pretty much making it blatantly obvious that your device had been tampered with. Now, the way that they fixed this was effectively completely alter the way that firmware updates are processed. And now, instead of moving information into the RAM and dumping the firmware directly into the flash while the secrets have been removed, they now are pretty much hashing chunks of the firmware and then including a header that is signed in the update. So what will happen is the device will take the header, including all of the hashes of different chunks of the firmware, which is signed with the factory key, and then take the firmware chunk by chunk into the RAM and ensure that the hashes match what's in the provided header, and piecemeal move it into the flash and perform the upgrade. And the device no longer removes the mnemonic information and puts it in the RAM. It is pretty much isolated in the flash through the entire firmware upgrade process at this time. And the last one was effectively something building on the wallet fail exploit that was shown at the Chaos Congress, and effectively is a glitch attack that does not require actually tampering with the enclosure. So this is something that can be performed without cracking the device open. And effectively, what happened is there is a limitation on the size of data that can be pushed back out through the USB port that is enforced through descriptor limitations. And what this attack does is effectively it can use the Windows Microsoft standard for USB descriptor requests to request information be dumped in excess of the allowed size. And because that relevant information is stored before the mnemonic data in the memory page layout, you could effectively glitch the device while it's going through the descriptor length check. And if you're able to interrupt that on a hardware level while it's going through that check, it will jump back to the data request and dump out information in excess of what it's supposed to, which will go down through the memory table and actually dump the mnemonic seeds. And there were a few different ways to fix this. Pretty much implementing new limitations on outgoing data packet sizes, as well as introducing a new rule in the memory protection unit, which pretty much creates a non-readable block of memory in the memory table before the mnemonic seeds are actually stored. And so if you were to attempt to perform this attack now, even if you were successfully able to glitch the device, it would read past into the non-readable block of memory and then fail. And so you would not be able to extract the secret information through this glitch anymore, at least anywhere near as simply as this previous exploit, which would take only a few hours with the required equipment to do so. And so pretty much all of these have been fixed in the 1.8.0 firmware update. And despite these issues pretty much only being a problem in the Trezor 1 model, they have included all of these firmware updates in the Model T updates as well, just to mitigate these issues if ways were found to exploit this in the future with that device as well.
All right, man. So it sounds like it's all patched up, but what do you say, man? What should we be all right with a Trezor? Definitely, you know, worried about secure elements for Ledger, Cold Card, air gap machine. Should we be creating our own hardware wallet with Raspberries? Like, what should we be
I
doing?
use a Cold Card, and honestly, like the issue is it's fine if it's not physically compromised. But if somebody physically gets access to that device, it is going to be much easier to try to exploit it in a device without a secure element versus one with it. And ultimately, I think given the fact that pretty much most of the risk in actually having a hardware device compromised is somebody actually physically stealing it, I think it's incredibly foolish to not get a device that has a higher degree of security in that kind of attack, personally.
I mean, I agree that with the way that the device is built, that is the biggest risk in terms of what's the easiest way to compromise it would obviously be a physical attack. And that's the case with a lot of hardware wallets, and they vary in terms of being able to protect against that. But in terms of how hardware wallets, including the Trezor, are designed, they are designed to reduce the risk of, you know, people who would normally just be storing their keys on a regular general purpose like laptop or desktop device, which they have pretty much done very effectively with very little issues. And almost all of the vulnerabilities that have come out have been related to physical attacks. And that doesn't really, I think, surprise anyone, because their main concern is protecting, you know, what happens, what data is transmitted between a potentially compromised general purpose device like a laptop and this hardware device. And they've done that mostly effectively. And obviously the Cold Card makes different trade-offs that are, I would agree that that's definitely better to Trezor in terms of protecting against physical attacks. But I wouldn't make the claim that they are the least secure hardware wallet just because they don't use a secure element, because they made that decision very purposefully.
They absolutely are. Like, they have had more exploits that can extract key information than any other wallet out there, and they happen on an almost regular basis. It is literally almost every 6 months an exploit is found that would allow you to extract the keys if you have physical access to a device.
Yes, there are reports of these vulnerabilities that are published regularly, but that doesn't mean that vulnerabilities aren't being found in other hardware wallets and just not being published, as we have found with a certain other hardware wallet that just has a tendency to not want to be transparent about that.
If things were patched or fixed in a patch, yes, they might not be directly published and acknowledged by a producer, but they will eventually come out. And ultimately, it is undeniable that there are way more exploits that have been discovered and publicly came out for Trezor than the other hardware wallets. And I mean, again, like I said, as long as the device is not physically lost, yes, they're fine for use. But physical theft and physical attack methods are going to be how somebody comes after your hardware wallet.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard thing to say. Like, what's the best option for you? It's all dependent upon what your level of security needs to be and, how competent you are in the system. Because, some people, this is just the best they could do because, they worry about using a cold card, or they worry about Glacier protocols and losing it, or, it's just a weird level of scale as far as how important and how secure you need to be on all this. All right, with there any more comments, we can go into some of this regulatory stuff.
Go for it.
All right, we were talking about the Quadriga stuff earlier and some of this craziness going on with the way that these exchange was run. So shortly after we ended the show on Wednesday, some news broke from our friend Kyle Torpy. He has multiple confirmed sources that users of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have received an extensive questionnaire from the CRA, Canadian Regulatory Authority. The questionnaire is 13 pages long and has 54 questions with another 50 sub-questions that dig deep into anyone's personal experience with crypto since their history in the space began. It's a really invasive questionnaire that really just exemplifies a terrible regulatory approach to an emerging market. If everyone in Canada that is involved in Bitcoin completes this questionnaire, it will give the CRA a detailed insight into people's position in the space. It covers all your potential history in mining, merchant services, mixing services, ATMs, ICOs, assets, wallets, and it asks for great detail in all these subjects and more. When the CRA was asked for a response to these questions, they said, quote, "The Canadian Revenue Agency understands that a vast majority of middle-class Canadians pay their fair share, but it remains committed to ensuring that without exception, every taxpayer abides by the same tax laws. As a world-class tax administration, the CRA is also committed to adapting its administration to keep pace with evolving global services and products and making key investments to effectively address the new ways of doing business in the global economy." The CRA, in order to make, this is still the quote, "In order to make good on these commitments, the CRA established a dedicated cryptocurrency unit in 2017 to build intelligence and conduct audits focused on risk related to cryptocurrencies. This unit has enhanced the CRA's ability to monitor and enforce compliance in areas of emerging risk, including the cryptocurrency space. There are currently over 60 active audits related to cryptocurrency. The CRA's enhanced efforts in this space stem directly from its broader underground economy strategy, which includes a commitment to monitor emerging platforms and new business models with a special focus on the sharing economy and digital currencies." Close quote. All right. Sorry, I just grabbed a big chunk of that statement. So now the amount of questions asked for addresses related to all your activities, including ones you sent Bitcoin to, really won't help them identify who has which coins. I mean, that address might have been a paper wallet or an open dime. Maybe, you lost the private keys in a computer fire or a boating accident, or maybe somebody compromised your Trezor like we just talked about. Also, Francis Poulier points out correctly that we could send over millions of addresses using mnemonic seeds to generate new addresses and just overload these guys with spam on these addresses. Like, it's really kind of absurd. Like, what's the bottom line that they're going after on all this? But this whole story got a little heat before the release when the CRA project oversight director, Jared Adams, quoted a tweet from Francis explaining how to purchase Bitcoin in Canada without using a bank account. The director simply said, "Duly noted," and then proceeded to duly note his company, Francis's company's website, explaining ways to avoid your bank account from being closed from using Bitcoin, which led to his assumption of money laundering with a tweet just saying washingmachine.gif. Now, with this series of tweets and this invasive questionnaire, it has people in the US worried something similar might get handed down from the IRS. This story broke before my meetup this past Thursday, and it took over a part of the discussion. Rightfully, we discussed how this regulatory approach is going to scare away any potential new crypto business that might have been thinking of doing their work there from Canada. Also, as some have speculated in the comments to this story, it could actually encourage those before who didn't know about the possibilities with crypto to take that route. There is a link in the show notes to a recent story breaking about another leak of banking documents similar to the Panama Papers that covers, quote, snow laundering, where they cover how every year billions of dollars gets routed through Canadian registered shell companies as a favorite mechanism for cleaning money through traditional institutions. So it's an upsetting development in Canada to see everyone having to participate in this questionnaire. I'd honestly see if there could be a movement to protest it and see if they could push back against the CRA on this amount of information. I'm not sure how much pull they actually have in the country or what they could lead to or what this could lead to. But for sure, if this goes unchecked, Bitcoin business in Canada will suffer from this heavy-handed approach. And like we were saying, as far as the regulated aspects of the space right now in Canada, as far as like QuadrigaCX possibly just working with regulators, and they still had all this stuff wrong. I mean, this is where we were saying, like, if we don't come up with best practices, we could get some sort of heavy-handed approach like this. I think with the IRS in the U.S., we might, they might be not. I don't think they could actually just go for this level of questions. I mean, it's deep. I mean, there's a link in the show notes to the questionnaire, and it's the Scribe D link. And if you got time, it takes about 20 minutes just to read through the questions, and you can kind of get a picture of, like, they want to know everything about anything since you started working in this space. So do you guys have any comment on this stuff being handed down?
Yes, I have one related comment to it. The Lib Bitcoin creator, Eric Buskill, said, go break the law. It's black market money.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a less extreme critique with this. Like, this is just not a viable, like, way to approach this at all. Like, one, I mean, there is no way that this leads anywhere except cross-referencing records on exchanges with KYC data to double check this information. So, like, that's going to happen. And then ultimately, there is no way to prove you don't still have control of coins. If I buy coins on Coinbase and I send them to you, Rick, like, there is absolutely nothing that can prove I don't still have those coins. I can't prove that I don't have a private key or control over an address. Even if you claim to prove that you have them instead of me, there's no way to prove that I don't also have control over those. Like, this is just a clusterfuck of, like, try to prove a negative. Like, it is absolutely not a viable way to move forward with this kind of shit. And not to mention, just
you have to make sure you can prove it. You have to write down everything.
But you can't. Like, if I am recorded buying a coin and I send it to somebody else, there is no way at all ever that I can prove I don't have control of those coins. There's no.
And which addresses you own.
But that doesn't prove that I don't own something. Like, there's no way I can prove to somebody that I don't have a specific private key. I can't do that. That is literally impossible.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. I have no words for it.
Mm-hmm. And, like, it's just, this is not something that is, like, this is going to go forward, and it's either going to fizzle out and go nowhere, or it's going to create a legal situation where somebody is assumed guilty and has to prove their innocence. And that is completely in contradiction with the entire ideological foundation of Western legal systems. Like those are the only two directions this is going to go.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most upsetting ways that the questionnaire is being asked. It's just like assuming that, you know, if you're in this space, you're doing something criminal, and they want to figure out what's going on, and you're guilty until you prove innocent by explaining everything about anything that got you in, as far as like the first money you spent, where you spent your coins, you know, I mean, the mixing services, all these different things, aspects of the space. Like I say, 54 different questions with 50 sub questions over 13 pages. I mean, it's extensive. I like don't even have time. We don't have time to list these questions and how invasive they are. You guys can read through them. And for sure, it just doesn't even really add up to something that we can really prove in a court of law. It's just putting people's information further at risk. It's absolutely it looks like a gross overreach of somebody trying to figure out one way to regulate this space. And I mean, whoever this Jared guy is, this director of the CRA, like he needs to get a handle on it. I was looking at his tweets through this, and I mean, he's been more interested in AI than anything up until just recently. And I'm kind of curious if it's maybe that QuadrigaCX situation that's got them moving this quick, fast, in a hurry. I'm not sure, but it's a possibility.
This is going to get challenged in court. Like this is going to. This is a insane overreach of things. Like this is literally like the IRS coming to you and going, we want an itemized list of absolutely everything you own, from cars and houses and real estate down to a box of thumbtacks. Like that is absolutely insane.
They want to know the location where you bought the thumbtacks. They want to know everything. It's crazy. It is crazy.
It's much more, because if you tell them which Bitcoin addresses you control, then you tell them your whole fucking financial history, and if Bitcoin takes over the world, then they can just correlate that with their other data they get. So it's just it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, my response as a Canadian would be, go fuck yourself. Take me to court.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm somebody that ran a meetup up there, or, you know, Jonathan Bertrand or Francis Pouliot, one of these guys that are doing, you know, major things over there to try and help move Bitcoin forward in that area, I would for sure be trying to set up some sort of protest against this whole thing. But I mean, you know, it's a risk. I mean, I don't know how much pull these guys have. I mean, are they like the IRS and they could just shut you down? I don't know. Any more comments on this? Let's just drive on to maybe a little bit better regulatory story.
Good.
All right, so let's move from Canada to Colorado. So I'm happy to say that just a couple days ago, our newly elected Governor Jared Polis has signed his first piece of legislation called the Digital Token Act. It's an attempt to encourage growth in the sector of blockchains and cryptocurrency here locally in Colorado. Like I've said in the past, there are many companies here in Colorado working on different aspects within cryptocurrencies and building out different token projects. Well, now with this legislation, as long as they can provide a legitimate use case and they follow the rules for fundraising, they can rest easy knowing they're not breaking any laws. Colorado's Chief Information Officer, Teresa Shurik, says, quote, creating a Colorado Digital Token Act with limitations to protect consumers will enable Colorado businesses that use crypto economic systems to obtain growth capital to help expand their businesses. The cost and complexities of state securities registration can outweigh the benefits to Colorado business using crypto economic systems that seek to raise capital and create new decentralized internet platforms, close quote. So the link to the bill is in the article in the show notes. And I encourage any armchair lawyers or people looking for similar legislation in other states to take a look. I was surprised to see how the document is written in pretty fairly plain English. It just uses words that is still pretty ill-defined, like I was just saying in those quotes there. I mean, they say a lot of blockchain-based technology, crypto economic systems, and our favorite word, decentralized. So it's trying to translate this. So I'm sorry. So in trying to translate this legislation, it looks like you can make an ICO here in Colorado after filing a notice of intent with the state securities commissioner. And the main thing is it has to have a consumptive purpose. Once it gets the approval from the commissioner, it looks like you're allowed to have one round of fundraising, and then the coins or tokens can't be moved again until they are used for their specified consumptive purpose. It sounds like this could do a good job of trying to clear out any potential blatant scams that might have wanted to set up shop here in Colorado. I'm sure it will also give the local Zcash and Ethereum community some breathing room to know they are working in the green, as long as they could provide a consumptive purpose for their coin, which, with all the marketing budget of those two networks, I'm certain they can find an answer to that question, and they'll probably get away with their initial sales not following these guidelines in some sort of fine. Like I said earlier, the language of the bills reads rather plainly, and I'd be interested to see how they handle the enforcement side of this document. Words like decentralized are going to have to become better defined, and these larger crypto economic systems are going to have to be better understood to understand potential use cases. There's a lot of ground to cover before the law takes effect here on August 2nd of this year. In the show notes, I have a second bill put forward by Colorado Representative Jack Tate, a Republican senator, and is put forward by Republican Senator Jack Tate, Mark Caitlin, and as well as a Democratic Representative Jenny Arndt. It's Senate Bill 184, and it's an attempt to use blockchain technology to create a solution for water management rights. It's very vague, very short bill that wants to create water banks to help manage water rights. And this is where I'm curious how this new law will be enforced. Will it encourage more scams based off an inability to define this terminology involved? I'm not sure if the bill gets through. If this bill gets through, this water rights management based off of this new Digital Token Act, then it seems like it could be a major sign to bring in more scams just through these legal routes. I mean, I'm going to remain hopeful and keep working with locals here to try and help define these words, because, you know, I mean, it could get ugly if politicians start figuring out a way to just come up with a consumptive token and start doing ICOs to fundraise for their political agendas. I mean, you know, we're going to have to watch the way it develops. I mean, nevertheless, it should be good to help encourage just the growth of the system here. And I mean, we know the guys are working close with Wyoming, and Wyoming's already got a lot of the financial aspects built out. There's a lot of developers here. They were really looking for some sort of legislation like this. I'm not really surprised this was the first thing passed by him whenever it comes to the cryptocurrency space. I'd be anticipating looking for that Cryptocurrency Tax Fairness Act next, which was put forward in 2017 and failed, where we could spend up to $600 with a crypto without it being a taxable event. So that's what's going on right now with Colorado. A little bit of a stark contrast to Canada. So what do you guys think of this Digital Token Act?
I think that this is not going to really fix anything, because as we've seen, you can just create any kind of nonsense utility token that has a consumptive use and just fucking scam people. And I mean, like, this is clearly, like, I mean, seriously, like, I'm going to make a utility token for farting, and I'm going to collect money. And then, oopsies, the project failed and it didn't work. I didn't commit securities fraud. It just didn't work.
Yeah, I know. That's where I was thinking, like, kind of just joking around in the mumble. I was like, I'm going to create a company called Decentralized and issue a token called usage or consumptive or something, just to see if, like, that could pass the legal smell test. But yeah, I mean, it goes into effect August 2nd. I mean, I'm sure that we're going to see these Zcash guys try to properly, you know, get in line with it. Same with the Ethereum guys. Like, they need to come up with their use case. I'm sure they're going to say something along the lines of, like, well, Zcash is where the technology is to be used to help develop privacy enhancing tools, and Ethereum's use is to drive a global world computer. You know, it's pretty out there, because whenever we know the facts of the situation and the way Ethereum's like just a inefficient mess at the time, right now, and it's still, open to a lot with all this forks going down right now. And with Zcash, that whole idea of like actually trying to improve privacy just includes these different things that these other forces as far as hidden inflation, and it just doesn't add up to a proper system, these crypto economic systems. We're going to see, we'll follow it. It's another 5 months, a little bit under 5 months before it goes live. And I don't know. We'll see how they handle this water rights banking bill, because, I mean, that one is pretty blatantly stupid. So let's see how they handle that one. But yeah, that's what's going on with regulatory stuff in the area. So what is next? Going into dev taxes.
Alrighty. Are we ready for the next wave of stupid from Ethereum? Are we ready? All right.
Yeah.
So, Vitalik, non-giver of Ether, Buterin, is proposing that people support a community norm that the client/wallet developers can charge a 1 GUI fee for transactions sent through their wallet. And that we don't try to get around this. And we even try to create hard forks or soft forks or protocol adjustments to require this. So, like, you can't get around it.
Come on. You are misrepresenting. He's saying that people are going to get around this. I agree with you. This is stupid.
No, because the last part is, and we support protocol changes to make such fees easier.
Easier to implement, not protocol changes to enforce.
Okay. Well, fair point, but it's still absolutely and utterly retarded. Like, here's a notion. If you want to have a wallet that sends or gives fees to the person who made the wallet, how about you build something that's actually worth people paying the wallet developers for? Like, I don't know, a mixing service? Huh? That sound too crazy, everybody? Actually provide something for money you're charging as a service? Wink, wink. Nod, nod, no para.
I like that idea.
I like that idea too.
But yeah, I mean, this is just absurd to try and just say that, like, transacting normally through a wallet, you should have to pay the wallet developer. Like, that's like, I'll just fork the fucking code and use it myself. Why the hell would I do that if they're not providing some service that I need them for that's worth me paying for? Why the fuck would I do that? And especially when you really get down to it, how much of the Ethereum supply did the Ethereum developers and foundation have at the start of this to build things? Why the fuck do they need to start charging people just to use software?
Can I ask you something before we get into the discussion? Like, how did he imagine this? Do I not understand that Ethereum well? Because in Bitcoin, this community standard would be like, okay, let's just make a deal with the miners that they are going to pay out the developers they make the transactions with. But in Ethereum, how would you do this without trashing the blockchain? What was this?
You would have to thrash the blockchain, but like every wallet like actually creates its own contract to like make the account and handle that. So like the only way you could do this is just like include in that contract, like every time you transact, the person who wrote it gets money.
All right. I have only one thing to add to this, that basically what he's proposing is wallet fingerprinting, which I spent a lot of time to avoid, but this is just wallet fingerprinting.
That's a damn good point.
So not only is it nonsensical, not only does it really make no economic sense, it completely destroys privacy. So that was a subtle hint at Vitalik clapping, by the way, for those who didn't get it.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. I mean, I'm always kind of shocked the way Ethereum tries to say they don't compete with Bitcoin, yet they yell about how they're going to be worth more than Bitcoin and how they just wreck their economic policy or any sense of security with the way that they move forward with their development. I mean, like maybe this is just Vitalik. He's trying to exit the system as much as possible. He's like, well, how are we going to keep developers going if there's not some foundation that has money to fund this development? Well, we'll just, I don't know, we'll create a practice where everybody that makes a wallet, they charge like an internal fee or something. And they reduce their block reward. They're just doing things that just don't add up to like any sort of secure economic system. And I'm really curious as to what the hell. I think every different Ethereum developer would probably have a different use case for what they're building out there, like without a solid answer. I mean, it's just getting ridiculous. So I'm not too surprised to see Vitalik tweet something like this, especially with some of his crazy tweets in the past.
You know, it was just like for normal people like us, when we get drunk, we figure out with our friends we should open a bar, right? He's like, okay, I'm just tweet, we should tax the people.
Yeah, that's another nightmare. I don't know why that ecosystem is just continues to roll on, but it's a large network, a lot of funding, marketing, and so they're always spitballing ideas to get things to stick. I don't know if this one will though.
It's not like it's not. But in the interest of time, though, about 25 minutes left. What's going on in Bitcoin developer land, Nopara?
So BitcoinJ added segregated witness a couple of a month ago, 2 months ago. In Wasabi, we are getting a lot of requests for people that they can only send to batch 32 addresses. Well, yeah, that's not how the request goes, but the request comes like, hey, my wallet, my exchange, my whatever says that it's an invalid address. What's going on? Right, so we wanted to contribute to things, and we were checking out other implementations. And BitcoinJ is one of the library that probably a decent percentage of the ecosystem is using. And actually, we figured out BitcoinJ implemented segregated witness batch 32 sendability, but they did not release for 1 year already. So anyway, now they added a full SegWit support, which is very, let's just not trash the developer, because BitcoinJ is a terribly complex library, a very old library, and properly implementing this is not that easy. So anyway, they finally merged it after 1 year of first pull requests. They finally merged the full segregated witness integration into BitcoinJ, and now they released, and now the softwares who are using BitcoinJ are going to be able to send to batch 32, and if they want, they can even make their wallet segregated witness wallet. That's up to the software. What software I found using this? Well, Samurai was using this, but Samurai forked it, and they just do their own stuff, so they don't contribute back, so they don't use BitcoinJ. They use a fork of it, their own fork. Other one was Bitcoin Wallet. You might have heard about that. That was actually the first Bitcoin wallet So the name of the wallet is Bitcoin Wallet. Okay, it's an Android wallet. That one I think a lot of people are using, so that's good. And Bisq. Bisq is, I think it's gonna take for like half a year for them, but anyway, now they will do that. So that's nice. And probably a lot of exchanges, because Java is a very common language. Probably a lot of exchanges are using Java. So fingers crossed, and let's see the segregated witness adoption, how it will affect the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. You know, that was actually seriously disappointing to me when Samurai forked it and people did not migrate over and start supporting that, given how fucking long it took. And I mean, like, from my understanding, like, a large part of why they didn't implement it for over a year is just because the person who's maintaining BitcoinJ is pretty much a big blocker and just didn't care about it. Like, didn't care that the library he's maintaining, which is so widely used in the ecosystem, was lagging ridiculously behind like what was actually available technically. And then on top of that, like you have the Samurai alternative, and all of the wallets using BitcoinJ just use the lack of support in the official library as an excuse to not implement things. Like it's really fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I so disagree with you. I don't even know where to start. So I think the guy who is maintaining so BitcoinJ history, it was started by Mike Hearn, we all know who he was, and it was taken over by Andres Schildbeck, who is actually the writer of the Bitcoin wallet. Anyway, what I was looking at, because I looked at all the GitHub issues, pull requests, that what's going on, and was trying to find any kind of like shit on him, but there was none. I mean, it's really just a very, very complex library, and he just didn't want it to, like, some people came, drop I don't know, few thousand lines of code, and he just didn't want it to merge it without properly taking care. I mean, you can. He's not being paid. He cares about the code quality, and he was the one at the end who properly implemented it. It wasn't Nicola Dorier who made the first PR. It wasn't Green Address. It wasn't Lawrence from Blockstream who made the second big PR. It was he who succeeded to implement it properly with a bunch of tests and everything. So I would like, if a library developer library I'm using is that well.
Well, no, but here's my point.
Precautious.
Somebody took that code base and implemented all of this stuff almost a year ago. How is that work not being done?
Yeah, that's they
a
didn't.
basis to build on.
No. So Samurai is not Samurai only implements the stuff that they care about, right? What it doesn't fail in their software. But BitcoinJ is a huge library with Bloom filtering, SPV wallet stuff, with a bunch of other components that Samurai doesn't care about, and like half implementations, right? They don't. Samurai only cares about what is inside their wallet, but he has to care about everything what's inside the library, and that's why it matters.
No, but the address format and script implementation was done by Samurai. That is a huge chunk of the work. That is the core of it, and the rest of it is pretty much taking all the other functions.
Done by Peter Willie in every language, and then he released segregated witness, and that's just a very, very small part of the work. How do you handle paths?
Dude, like, I just completely disagree. And like, I know for a fact that Andreas is a big blocker, and that a huge part of the delay was definitely that. I mean, one of the big things that turned me off from this library is during the entire 2x incident, he went out of his way to sneak in 2x seed nodes and tried to hide that from everybody, including it in a default, which would have pushed all of the people using anything built on BitcoinJ onto the 2x chain if the miners actually supported it and went through with it. Like, he is a malicious person.
Okay,
He has
it
taken
might be a
malicious.
misblocker, but I read an article from actually Aaron did that article in Bitcoin magazine. He was interviewing him, and he said segregated witness is great, and that was in 2016. And he was not trashing SegWit, but in fact hyping it, and that was the article about. I can send it to you, but
Actions speak louder than words. And his actions were intentionally sneaking in code, trying to push SPV wallets onto a malicious chain without giving users choice.
yeah, and his action was to build a stable thing with a bunch of tests that's not going to fail for every second user of that library. So actions speak louder than words. I mean, I know you want everything for tomorrow, but it just, developer time, especially free developer time, that's you're not getting paid. It's just not how that works. 1 year implementing such complex changes, I think it's great.
Yeah, I guess we can just agree that it's good that it's updated now and everything's ready for SegWit, and that's a great thing. But I can imagine that anybody that was kind of indecisive about what to do with SegWit, because there was probably a good chunk of people there in the middle, and they wanted to, I guess, wait and see, and then properly test and make sure everything got built out without any bugs or worries. I mean, we know there was a few little issues there between the release of SegWit and now, and so I mean, like, yeah, it's upsetting it took that long. It's real upsetting to hear that he put in that 2x mnemonic seed, but it's good to go now. So I guess he sort of found a way where it's like he's kind of more assured now that this is the proper way to do things.
Well, I'm like, end of the line, I'm never going to trust him again. Like, period.
I get it.
But 14 minutes left, though, so we're going to move along. Next up is a little bit of surprising news 2 days ago from Fidelity. Apparently, their system quietly went live without any public announcement. So for the past few months now, people have actually been using this to execute trades and store their coins. And I mean, for those who don't remember, their initial product is effectively just a mechanism to handle purchases for large players by spreading those orders out between other exchanges, with Fidelity effectively acting as a person who takes an order from a customer and then fills it across a number of different exchanges to kind of spread the liquidity all over the place. And they have had a number of different wealthy families, hedge funds, and endowment funds slowly start using this over the past few months. And they've kind of been very selective in who they're bringing on board when. Like, for instance, some customers have been using it since January. Some have just been introduced onto the platform this month. And they're kind of slowly going to be bringing in more users over the rest of this year in a kind of stagnated way. But one of the most interesting things about this, I think, is kind of their feedback from potential users who they've actively been going around surveying. And pretty much 22% of the institutions, the hedge funds, families, pensions, and so on, that they have contacted, 22% already have some cryptocurrencies. And those who already do are expecting to double their allocation into the ecosystem over the next 5 years. So that is a pretty big percentage of institutional players already in this ecosystem and looking to continue expanding their positions in the ecosystem. And the bear market for the last year has pretty much had no effect at all on their interest. Like, they're just as interested in allocating funds into the space as they were, and even some more so than during the all-time highs during early 2018. And even some of the people who are not currently holding things are interested in learning more. And they seem to have found like a correlation between those who actually have a decent understanding of the space already are those who are already invested in the ecosystem. So it's a clear trend based on their inquiries that those who understand Bitcoin at a deeper level are those already invested. And there are still a large amount of people who are still interested in continuing to learn about the ecosystem.
Yeah, these guys, they always, they took the Ellen torch, and they seem to be at the top of their game as far as like people that are coming from the traditional area of the space, institutions, and where they're trying to translate it over to Bitcoin and crypto. They just, they seem to be building things out quietly in the background, and it's been working out for them. And I guess it was all sort of part of a beta that has gone live quietly. It's a good thing. I mean, I'm sure there'll be lots of people that are going to try and jump into this service, and we'll see who takes advantage of that now that it's launched. I mean, between them and TD Ameritrade, they seem to be the two that are really kind of making pushes for the space from the institutions. I mean, we know that there's some bigger things going on in the background with, backed and all these sorts of contracts that are going on with Wall Street. But these guys that were made for more of the retail side and some institutional players that just because Fidelity and TD Ameritrade, they're both pretty much like open access compared to Wall Street and everything. So, yeah, looks like they're doing good things.
Mm-hmm. Any more input on this before we move along? Probably going to wind up smashing the next two stories into one thing.
Let's go for it.
Alrighty. So, former employee Main, from the Copernicus project, which was a Bcash centered team within the company, mostly trying to kind of boost ecosystem development for Bcash and working on the wormhole counterparty like protocol for Bcash, which were all let go, are going to be forming a new company that is looking to provide custody, OTC trading, and lending features. And some of the rumors in this coverage of this are indicating that Jihan Wu is not going to have any involvement in this right now, but a Bitmain shareholder is going to be heading this company, and that there is potential that Jihan Wu might move over and take charge of this company at a later date. But the Bitmain shareholder, Yusheng Yi, is going to take the role of CEO as it's initially formed. And I think that this could potentially be the company that I think Crypto Venus stated a while ago that Jihan is going to be leaving to become involved with. But given the fact that that initial assertion was really just repeated rumors without any kind of substantiation, it's not really clear. But I would say that given what this company is going to claim to concentrate on, these are exactly the kinds of things that Bcash is totally failing for. Like the lack of support, lack of demand on OTC, like market infrastructure to build up and incentivize liquidity. And it would really make sense that this is the type of stuff that they would concentrate on in order to try and stop Bcash from continuing to just flounder around aimlessly. But in other news related to Bitmain, Samson Mao yesterday tweeted out a little bit of an update going on with the company, and more lawsuits are being filed from assembly, component production, and repair companies that are being left unpaid. and pretty much hit the point of they're just going to sue Bitmain for this. And as well, another interesting fact is that apparently the S15s that Bitmain recently produced were sold at 30% below cost. And there were only around 1,000 of them made. So if this is accurate, that literally, beyond the shadow of a doubt, confirms that the entire announcement with the S15 was nothing but a PR stunt. Nothing but an attempt to create optics that look favorable given just how horrible their financial situation is and how badly their IPO bid is going for them. And hysterically, the last part that is really just hilarious is the 7 nanometer chip fabs cost 3 times as much as 16 nanometer chip fabs. And remember, the company Byteway, started by their former engineer who designed the S9, has a 16 nanometer rig that is marginally less efficient than Bitmain's 7 nanometer chips. So a third of the cost for an insignificant difference in efficiency. But that cost is not the only problem that they're facing, because the entire market dynamics for 7 nanometer chip fabrication is just shifting completely against ASIC manufacturing right now, with pretty much all of the capacity TSMC has being bought up by Apple, Qualcomm, Huawei, NVIDIA, AMD, all of the major conventional computing hardware companies. And there are issues going on with other companies capable of 7 nanometer fabrication as well. AMD specifically had to switch to TSMC, or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, to TSMC because Global Foundries, who they were using, closed their 7 nanometer fab plants. And Qualcomm had to switch from Samsung due to a lack of capacity to TSMC. So ultimately, even if they are able to somehow pull money out of a hat to pay for 7 nanometer fabrication at 3 times the cost of 16 nanometers to be in any way competitive with new companies, there just is not the capacity available from anybody capable of actually fabbing it to produce it. So like they're literally completely fucked. They're not able to pay their bills as far as actually manufacturing things. The S15 was literally nothing but a 1,000 machine run for PR purposes. And they do not have any production capacity available at any of the foundries they use to even make any more 7 nanometer chips for the rest of the year, because it's all being used by big tech giants for conventional products. Like, they are absolutely, utterly, completely fucked.
Well, I wonder if that IPO is going to go through, man. I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy how bad the news has been over there. And yeah, it looks like that press release was just to try and clean up some good PR during all this bad news. And yeah, it's hard to say what's going to happen with Bitmain. I mean, all that big investment into Bcash, and the S15 is not working out. And I imagine they build these things out on loans to make sure that they're based off of predicted sales. And I mean, if sales were 30% of what they were expected to be, then yeah, I can imagine they're having trouble paying people back. And the lawsuits just keep piling up. And this idea of what are you going to do with all this stack of Bcash? I guess you better start a company that tries to build it up. I don't know. It's a crazy situation over there. I kind of feel sorry for Jahan to see that he's got a picture of him, and I don't know what's going on with him and his buddy crying. It looks like they got some upsetting news.
They're getting shoved out of the company. They've lost their influential directory role. They're not in charge of running the company anymore, and they're getting shown the door. That's Jihan and Bakri Zan, the two CEOs, or former CEOs, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's rough stuff. If there isn't any more comment, yeah, we better rush into our next one because it's a good chunk too. Any better comments? Janine, you want to tell us about what's going on with Chelsea Manning?
Make your mother cry if you want cry.
That's not what's going on. What is going on? Because I have seen Chelsea Manning in the news a lot lately.
Yeah, so if anyone watching hasn't heard, Chelsea Manning was subpoenaed to testify in the grand jury case against WikiLeaks. And even though it's a secret hearing and many people have been trying to pretend that the subject of that grand jury is not known, we do know that the case relates to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange because the case number on her subpoena is the same one that appeared in a grand jury investigation against WikiLeaks several years ago. So we know what it's about. We don't know the precise questions. We don't know what she'll be asked. But we do know that it is about the WikiLeaks case and the grand jury is secret. And they've been investigating WikiLeaks basically from the beginning for a number of years. Now, unfortunately, because she took the principled stance of not only not wanting to repeat herself in terms of providing testimony in a matter that has already taken away several years of her life irretrievably, but also not being willing to participate in a secret court system that I think is not only unconstitutional, but as she states, has historically been used to spread fear among journalists and activist groups. For this reason, on March 8th, 2 days ago, she walked into a secret courtroom in Alexandria, Virginia, and the senior judge, Claude Hilton, ordered that she be taken into custody for contempt of court, despite her arguments of First, Fifth, and Sixth, I think Sixth Amendment as well, violations. Hilton objected specifically to the Fifth Amendment argument on the basis that because they had offered her immunity in exchange for testifying against Assange and WikiLeaks, therefore she had no Fifth Amendment privilege, which is asinine because this is exactly the kind of tool that they use against people like this. A lot of people related to WikiLeaks who were contacted to testify in this grand jury were also given immunity. But all it is a carrot to get them to rat on their friends and basically destroy WikiLeaks. That is the intention of this. It's not about justice. And so there were very few reporters present at the building, the court building during the hearing, but a journalist among them was Ford Fisher, and he filmed an interview with Chelsea before she entered the building, as well as with her lawyers following the hearing, who said that the maximum amount of time that she could be held in contempt for the duration of the grand jury, or if the grand jury takes longer, no more than 18 months. It is possible that she could be charged further after that, but for now the limit is 18 months. And do you guys want to play the clip or should I just keep going?
You want to keep going? I'll get it set up. I didn't have that ready.
Yeah, so just play the, I think it's the first one that I have linked in the description. So after it was reported that she had been taken into custody, the following statement was published through her Twitter account. She said, "I will not comply with this or any grand jury. Imprisoning me for my refusal to answer questions only subjects me to additional punishment for my repeatedly stated ethical objections to the grand jury system. The grand jury's questions pertained to disclosures from 9 years ago and took place 6 years after an in-depth computer forensics case and for almost a full day about these events. I stand by my previous public testimony." Do you have the clip?
Yeah, we don't have a
It's not a big deal.
We don't have a specific.
Is it possible that you aren't walking out those doors after this hearing? Could they get you today?
Yes.
How would we know? If you walk in there and then don't come out, how will we?
We'll put out a statement.
When is the hearing actually supposed to, can you say the time?
We don't have a
It's not a big deal.
we don't have a specific time. Okay. It's sometime in the next few hours.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So there were actually several of those clips, but we don't have to watch all of them. I just wanted to show one. There's a whole short clips that he made when he was talking to her before she went to the building. But yeah, so I read her statement, and so the judge ended up deciding that she was in contempt of court and she was taken into custody, and she has been transferred since then to the Adult Detention Center of Alexandria and is currently being held in a cell by herself while she is being, quote, classified, according to staff who were standing outside of the facility during a vigil that took place yesterday. So unsurprisingly, I was pretty upset about this for a number of reasons. And although I do feel very reassured by the way that, as you saw, even in that short clip, she conducted herself like she was very composed. And obviously no one wants to face going back to prison again, especially when she in particular was forced into solitary confinement on so many occasions. And then she was even tortured prior to her trial in various, military locations before being brought to the United States, and also at Quantico in the United States prior to being tried. And if you watch all of the videos from Ford Fisher, she appears very calm and optimistic about what she's about to do. And in my view, it completely rebukes the strategy of the US government that specifically Natasha Leonard, who has also been covering the case, wrote about years ago, which is that they need her to live, but to suffer as an example, as a warning to other whistleblowers. And she is completely destroying that strategy by how she's conducted herself so far. And so just to say again, no part of this case is about justice. It's about scaremongering. And even though I absolutely hate what is being done to her and what she has to deal with, her courage is so beautiful, and we should be proud of her decision to stand up to not only her abusers, but to stand up to the war criminals and their enablers that she exposed over a decade ago now, and literally saying to their face, do what you want to me. I will not comply with your corrupt system. And on a related note, since Chelsea Manning's disclosures were about war crimes by the US military, including the famous collateral murder video where a bunch of American soldiers gleefully murdered 2 innocent Reuters journalists and 2 children in cold blood and were never held responsible for that. While I was trying to deal with the news of her being once again imprisoned and sharing donation links to her legal funds, which you can find on Twitter, and also I think I linked video description, she accepts, the Courage Foundation on her behalf accepts Bitcoin and also Zcash as well, in addition to various other fiat payment methods. I saw a report where the Trump administration is apparently preparing to make demands to various countries that are hosting the US military around the world, and saying not only that those host countries should cover the cost of housing and feeding those military personnel, but that they should even pay a fee for the privilege of hosting them. And since one of those countries is Germany, I just want to say I have a much better idea. How about you all pack your fucking bags and take your entitled asses back to where you came from? Because my primary reason, one of my primary reasons for leaving the United States, is because I object to having the fruits of my labor pay for the military-industrial complex to go around ravaging and raping so many parts of the world. So how dare you come to a place where I have tried to take refuge and so many other people from the United States have tried to take refuge and say, no, you can't escape us. You'll still have to pay for our crimes. And I'm going to say, no, fuck yourselves.
Oof, yeah.
Balls of steel. Oh yeah, joke in poor taste.
Yeah. For sure. But I mean, for sure, there's some strong courage there. You see the way that she's just like stand up, strong faced about this whole 18 months in custody. And yeah, it's just crazy that there's these secret courts, secret hearings on a case number we know has to do with WikiLeaks. And there's this whole background effort to coerce people to either fall in line or, just fall in line basically. And it's really hard whenever you put on that uniform and there is this huge conflict of interest where, you come from, if you put on that uniform, you come from a small background somewhere in the country. And whenever you get into that big piece of the machinery to where you could see some of the gears just absolutely tearing down people in ways that, I mean, like we know that people have been tortured, people have been killed, through not just the US military, but, mercenary groups. And it's just been horrendous what we've done since 2001 when it comes to going around the world and trying to, quote, in the name of spreading democracy or stopping terrorism or whatever it's in quotes of. Whenever you are on the ground there and you're seeing things that go against what your country and constitution and everything says. And I mean, you took an oath that says you should stand up against enemies, foreign and domestic, to the Constitution, and you see these terrible things going on, where we're supposed to live in a lawful society, and there's no laws. There's no black and white on this. It's all gray. It's a terrible thing, and yeah, it's a good thing to see Chelsea go in there with some strong courage and really kind of just put the whole idea of this being a big instrument to scare people out of the thought pattern. It's awful. I mean, like, you think, when's this going to end? But it's hard to tell. I mean, though, yeah, it's awesome. It's awful.
Mm-hmm. That's governments for you, though. So I guess let us take this into final thoughts for the day. Janine, you got one lined up?
I don't have a link to share. I just want to reiterate that Coinbase, still dealing with the delete Coinbase stuff, and they have used to answer questions regarding when Hacking Team will actually be leaving Coinbase. They have directly been asked by Breaker Mag, like a series, I think it was 5 questions total. They actually said, like, not answering these questions, even though they did apparently respond to one of their writers. And so I just want to remind everyone who thinks that because Brian Armstrong did a response, that should be satisfactory. You are absolutely wrong. Nothing has changed.
Sorry, 1 second. You guys move along with that. I need to extract a cat.
I was wondering what that was. A quick interjection. Yeah, it would be good to actually see some timelines on that, and actually make sure that all those people are leaving and that's not really even going to be affiliated with them anymore. But like Brian Armstrong, I don't know if he's actually going to do it. It seems like they're trying to not do anything at this point because they know everything they've done since this hiring has just exacerbated the news around this situation. I wouldn't be surprised if they shut up for the next 6 months. Anyway, hopefully Shinobi's going to wrangle that cat and come back to us with a final thought. My final thought is just go out, support your local meetups. We got a meetup coming up on Tuesday. There's always, every Tuesday, the Denver Bitcoin and Beer meetup. Every other Thursday, we got the Boulder Valley Bitcoin meetup if you're in the Colorado area. And just go, if you're not in the Colorado area, go search out your local meetups and support them.
All right, Milpar, you got a final thought for us?
Yeah, I just have a question. That do you guys take an absolutist stance on this thing that the U.S. is the police of the world and they should not be doing that and they should get out of every country?
Yes, I don't think that the U.S. should have any presence in any country that is not explicitly requested by that country without any kind of coercion on our part.
Also, if it's not explicitly requested. All right.
Also, for Germany in particular, it's completely stupid because German taxpayers were the ones who were building all of the military, or at least paying for a significant portion of the military bases that the US currently uses in Germany.
Yeah, and those military bases are pretty nice. I went to Frankfurt. I mean, like, yeah, that's kind of an on-the-spot question. I think, I think it would be good to pull out of every major country that we weren't in like a heavy alliance to basically, ward off certain aspects of geopolitics. I mean, I'd have to sit down and think about it a little bit more, but for sure we are way overextended in the way that we spread our force around this globe.
Yeah, it's kind of nuanced, right? Because countries like in the Middle East, there are people requesting the US to be there. In fact, a lot of you don't even know what are countries there. I mean, how do they define? How about Taiwan? Officially, Taiwan is not a country because there is only one country, and that's China. And if the US would go away from that part of the world, then China would just go and get Taiwan. And I don't know. It's just just something to think about. Yeah, that was me.
All right. And one last final thought, which is both me and Rick. So, speaking of defending Trezor, 5 different attacks against the Trezor being demonstrated by the Ledger team at the MIT Bitcoin Expo right now. 5. Yeah.
A cold card.
So, on that note, I guess that'll wrap us up for the day, and we will catch you guys on Wednesday. Adios.
Later, everyone.